The grand meeting hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with its usual golden light, but today something was different. Fear hung in the air like a thick fog. Around the circular table, representatives from 30 peaceful species sat in uncomfortable silence. Their usual calm demeanor had cracked, revealing worried faces and trembling appendages. At the center of attention stood the Bloom ambassador. His flower-like head drooped with exhaustion, and the usual bright colors of his petals had faded to a dull gray. The holographic display behind him showed devastating scenes from his homeworld. "Please," the ambassador's translator conveyed his desperate words. "The crystal creatures have already consumed 3 of our colony worlds. We've lost contact with 2 more. My people are dying." The display showed massive, jagged crystalline forms crawling across green landscapes, leaving nothing but barren rock in their wake. Cities of living plants, the proud achievements of the Bloom civilization, crumbled under the relentless advance of these silicon-based horrors. Council Chairman White raised his long, delicate fingers. "We understand your plight, friend, but what you ask?" He paused, his large eyes blinking rapidly. "None of our species are equipped to handle such aggressive entities. We are peaceful races. Our technologies focus on creation, not destruction." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. The representatives nodded, their expressions a mix of sympathy and helplessness. The Galactic Council had maintained peace for 10,000 years by accepting only species that had evolved beyond violence. From the far end of the table, where junior representatives sat, a small voice spoke up. "What about the Deathworlders?" The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to Tom Reed, the youngest assistant to the Archives Department. He shrank in his seat but continued. "The humans, we just made contact with them last year. Their planet, they call it Earth. It's classified as a death world." Chairman White's skin paled to an almost transparent shade. "You cannot be serious. They are barely out of their solar system." And there, he struggled to find a diplomatic word, dangerous. Tom straightened in his chair. "Yes, they are. But that's exactly why they might help. Their world has challenges worse than these crystal entities. They deal with extreme temperatures, natural disasters, dangerous predators. Their very biology is built for survival in harsh conditions." The holographic display shifted to show Earth, storms raging across vast oceans, volcanoes spewing molten rock, deserts baking under harsh sun, and frozen wastelands covered in ice. Yet in every hostile environment, humans had built thriving cities. "Look at their history," Tom continued, pulling up more images. "They've fought off countless invasive species on their world. They've restored dead ecosystems. They've learned to live in every environment their planet throws at them. And most importantly," he paused, looking at the Bloom ambassador, "they help others, even at great risk to themselves." The council erupted in concerned chatter. The idea of involving such an unpredictable species in galactic affairs was unprecedented. Humans were too young, too aggressive, too primitive. The Bloom ambassador's petals suddenly regained a hint of color. "Tell me more about these humans." "They're incredibly adaptable," Tom explained. "Where we see impossible challenges, they see problems to solve. They've developed technologies specifically for hostile environment management. And despite their capability for violence, they have strong protective instincts toward other species." Chairman White raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador, surely you're not considering this. Humans are classified as a restricted species for good reason. Their involvement could change the very nature of our peaceful coalition." The Bloom ambassador turned to face the council, his translator conveying words filled with quiet determination. "My people are dying. Our worlds are being consumed. If there is even a chance these Deathworlders can help, I must take it. Sometimes survival requires us to overcome our fears and prejudices." The chairman looked around the hall, seeing the mix of fear and curiosity on the faces of the representatives. After a long moment, he nodded slowly. "Very well. We will send a message to Earth. But remember," he added, his voice grave, We may be opening a door that can never be closed." As the council began drafting their historic request for help, Tom Reed sat quietly in his corner, wondering if he had just changed the course of galactic history. Sometimes, he thought, the most dangerous option was also the only hope. 2 weeks after the council's message was sent, a human ship arrived at the council station. It wasn't the sleek, artistic vessel most species used. Instead, it was bulky, practical, and covered in what looked like repair patches and scorch marks. The sight alone made several council members nervous. The human delegation walked through the station's pristine corridors with heavy boots echoing against the polished floor. Their leader, Ambassador Jack Thompson, was a tall man with gray hair and weathered skin. He carried himself with the confident stride of someone used to facing challenges head-on. "Watch the gravity settings," he called out to his team as they entered the council chamber. "Station's running at 60% Earth normal." The casual way he mentioned their deadly homeworld's conditions made several aliens shuffle uncomfortably in their seats. Chairman White rose to greet them, his translucent hands trembling slightly. "Welcome to the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Thompson. We appreciate your quick response to our message." Jack smiled, showing teeth, a gesture that made 3 council members flinch. "When someone calls for help, we come running. That's just how we do things on Earth." He looked around the room, noting the nervous faces. "Though I get the feeling you folks aren't too happy to see us." The Bloom ambassador rushed forward, his petals now a desperate shade of purple. "We are grateful for your arrival. Please, you must see what's happening to our worlds." He activated the holographic display, showing the latest footage of the crystal invasion. To everyone's surprise, Jack didn't react with horror. Instead, he stepped closer to the display, studying it with intense interest. "Fascinating structure these crystals have. Remind me of the silicon-based formations we found in our deep-sea vents." He turned to his team. "Dr. Wilson, what do you think?" "Similar growth patterns to the Australian reef incident." A woman with short black hair stepped forward, pulling out a handheld device that made several council members lean away. "Very similar, sir. We dealt with aggressive crystal growths in our ocean mining operations. Different composition, but the behavior patterns match." The council watched in amazement as the humans casually discussed what they considered a terrifying crisis as if it were an everyday problem. They pulled up their own data, compared notes, and even seemed excited about the challenge. "You've seen something like this before?" the chairman asked, his translator struggling to convey his mix of hope and disbelief. Jack turned back to face the council. "Not exactly the same. But Earth throws all sorts of challenges at us. Extreme environments, aggressive life forms, natural disasters. They're all just problems to solve. And solving problems is what humans do best." He walked to the center of the chamber and placed a data crystal on the table. "We've brought initial plans for containing and eliminating the threat. We'll need to modify some of our mining equipment, but we can start operations within a week." "A week?" The chairman's translator crackled with surprise. "But the environmental surveys alone would take months." Jack chuckled. "With respect, Chairman, we don't have months. The Bloom worlds are under attack now. On Earth, we learned that sometimes you have to act fast and adjust your plans as you go. It's not always pretty, but it works." The human team began displaying their plans. Robust ships designed to work in extreme conditions, protective suits that could withstand intense pressure and heat, and tools that could break down and process the crystal entities. As they explained their methods, the council members slowly began to understand why humans were classified as Deathworlders. It wasn't just their physical capabilities. It was their entire approach to life. Where the council saw impossible dangers, humans saw challenges to overcome. Where others feared to act, humans rushed forward with solutions. The Bloom ambassador's petals had brightened considerably. "You truly believe you can help us?" Jack placed a gentle hand on the alien's shoulder, careful not to damage the delicate petals. "We don't just believe it. We guarantee it. Earth has taught us that survival often means adapting and fighting back. We'll teach you how to defend your worlds, and we'll stand with you until the job is done." As the human team continued their presentation, Tom Reed sat in his corner, smiling. The Deathworlders hadn't just responded to the call for help. They had brought hope. Perhaps being dangerous wasn't always a bad thing, especially when that danger was focused on protecting others. 3 days after the council meeting, 5 massive human ships dropped out of hyperspace near the first targeted Bloom world. Unlike the elegant vessels of other species, these were converted mining ships, huge, dark shapes bristling with equipment. Their hulls bore scorch marks and dents from years of service in Earth's harshest environments. Commander Maria Torres stood on the bridge of the lead ship, the Earthborn, watching the crystal formation spreading across the planet's surface through the main viewport. To her experienced eyes, it looked like a massive infection, but one they could fight. "Reminds me of the Antarctic ice crystal outbreak," she said to her crew. "Remember how everyone said that was impossible to handle?" A few crew members chuckled, remembering their previous victories over seemingly impossible challenges. The Council observation team, watching from their safe distance aboard a shielded station, was horrified when the human ships descended directly into the atmosphere. They flew straight toward the largest crystal formation, ignoring the dangerous spikes and radiation it emitted. "What are they doing?" one council member whispered, his translator buzzing with anxiety. "The radiation levels there are lethal." The Bloom ambassador's petals trembled as he watched. But Tom Reed, now assigned as the human liaison, smiled. "Watch," he said. "This is what humans do best." The Earthborn hovered over the crystal formation, and massive doors opened in its belly. Heavy equipment descended on cables. Drilling rigs, processing units, and containment fields that the humans had modified from their deep-sea mining operations. Maria's voice came over the general communication channel. "Beginning Operation Breakpoint. All teams, sound off." One by one, human teams reported in. They were already suited up in their heavy environment suits, ready to face conditions that would kill most species in seconds. The council observers watched in amazement as humans walked directly onto the crystal formations, setting up equipment and taking samples. "First analysis coming in," reported Dr. Wilson, now on the ground team. "These crystals are similar to what we found in the Mariana Trench. They're using thermal energy to grow and spread." She adjusted some settings on her scanner. "But they have a weakness. They can't handle rapid temperature changes." Maria nodded inside her suit. "Just like we thought. All right, people, let's show them how Earth handles invasive species. Deploy the thermal shock units." The human teams moved with practiced efficiency, setting up devices around the crystal formation. These machines, originally designed to break up deep-sea ice formations, could create sudden, extreme temperature changes in targeted areas. "Council Station, you might want to adjust your filters," Maria warned. "This is going to get bright." The thermal shock units activated, creating alternating waves of extreme heat and cold. The crystal formation, unable to adapt quickly enough, began to crack. Pieces broke off and shattered, turning into inert fragments that could be safely collected and contained. It's working." The Bloom ambassador's petals brightened to a vibrant blue. "The crystals are breaking down." The council members watched in stunned silence as the humans methodically destroyed the formation that had resisted all their previous attempts to stop it. The human teams moved through the dangerous environment with casual confidence, joking and calling out to each other as they worked. "This is just the beginning," Maria explained over the comm. "We'll teach your people how to build and operate these units. Every Bloom world will have its own defense system." As the day progressed, more crystal formations were broken down and contained. The humans worked tirelessly, rotating teams to maintain constant progress. When radiation levels spiked, they simply adjusted their shields and continued working. When crystal shards threatened to pierce their suits, they patched them on the spot and kept going. By sunset, A large area had been cleared, and the first defensive perimeter was established. The council observers could hardly believe what they had witnessed. In one day, the humans had accomplished more than all their species had managed in months of trying. "I don't understand," one council member said to Tom. "How can they work in these conditions? How can they stay so calm?" Tom watched as another crystal formation crumbled under the human assault. "Because this is what Earth trained us for. Every challenge we faced on our world taught us something. Every disaster made us stronger. Every problem forced us to innovate." He smiled as he saw Maria's team setting up another thermal shock unit. "We're Deathworlders because our world never gave us a choice. But that's exactly why we're perfect for this job." The Bloom ambassador looked out at the cleared zone, where humans were already planning the next day's operation. "Perhaps," he said softly, "being a Deathworlder isn't about being dangerous. Perhaps it's about being strong enough to help others survive." 2 weeks into the operation, everything changed. The thermal shock units on the third Bloom colony world suddenly stopped working. The crystal entities had adapted, developing a new layer that could withstand the temperature changes. Commander Maria Torres stood in the emergency meeting room aboard the Earthborn, watching multiple screens showing live feeds from different colonies. The crystals were growing faster now, and their new formations glowed with an ominous purple light. "They're learning," Dr. Wilson said, pointing to the data scrolling across her tablet. "Every time we destroy one formation, the others adapt their structure. They're sharing information somehow." The Bloom ambassador's petals had turned almost black with despair. 2 more colony worlds have gone silent. "We're losing this fight." Maria walked to the central hologram table, her face determined. "No, we're not losing. The crystals are just doing what any species does, evolving to survive. Well, guess what? Humans wrote the book on adaptation." She pulled up images from Earth's history. Invasive species that had threatened entire ecosystems, natural disasters that had reshaped continents, and the solutions humans had developed to overcome them. On Earth, we learned that when one solution fails, you don't give up. You find another way. She turned to her team. "We've been too gentle. Time to show these crystals what humans do when we're really pushed." The council representatives watching the meeting through video feeds shifted uncomfortably. One spoke up. "What exactly are you suggesting, Commander?" "We hit them with everything at once," Maria said, pulling up new schematics. "Thermal shock was just the beginning. We combine extreme cold, sonic pulses, and electromagnetic disruption. If they can adapt to one thing, let's see them handle all 3. The energy requirements would be enormous," Dr. Wilson noted, but she was already calculating the numbers. "We'd need to modify our ship's power cores." "Then we modify them," Maria said firmly. "We didn't come across half the galaxy to fail now." The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Human engineers worked nonstop, converting their ship's equipment to handle the new requirements. They cannibalized non-essential systems, rebuilt power conduits, and created new tools on the spot. The council observers watched in amazement as humans worked through their sleep cycles, surviving on stimulant drinks and determination. When equipment burned out, they fixed it. When systems overloaded, they'd rebuilt them stronger. Finally, the new weapons were ready. Maria named them Thunderhead units, massive devices that combined all 3 types of attack into one overwhelming assault. "All teams, prepare for maximum output," Maria's voice crackled over the comm. "This is going to drain every bit of power we have. We get one shot at this." The first Thunderhead unit activated, its energy beam visible from orbit. The crystal formation it targeted tried to adapt, its surface shifting and changing. But before it could stabilize, the sonic pulse hit, followed by the electromagnetic burst. The crystalline structure couldn't adapt to all 3 attacks at once. It shattered, but not into the neat fragments they'd seen before. This time, it completely disintegrated. "It worked," Dr. Wilson shouted, checking her readings. "The complex structure is completely broken down. They can't regenerate from this." But their celebration was cut short as alerts blared across all channels. The remaining crystal formations had begun moving, actually uprooting themselves from the ground. They were gathering together, combining into larger structures. They're scared, Maria realized, watching the formations merge. They recognize us as a real threat now. She smiled grimly. Good. That means we can beat them. The Bloom ambassador watched the screens, his petals slowly regaining color. You seem pleased that they're gathering into larger groups. Of course, Maria replied, already planning the next attack. Now, instead of chasing them across whole planets, they're coming to us. And we've got plenty more surprises ready. As the human ships positioned themselves for the next assault, the council representatives finally understood something about Deathworlders. It wasn't just their ability to survive harsh conditions that made them formidable. It was their absolute refusal to accept defeat, their ability to adapt and overcome any challenge, that truly set them apart. The crystal entities had evolved to survive. But they were about to learn that humans had spent their entire history doing the same thing. And they'd gotten very, very good at it. The massive crystal formation loomed over the horizon like an angry mountain, its purple glow reflecting off the clouds above. But this time, the humans were ready for it. Commander Maria Torres watched from her command post as 3 Thunderhead units moved into position. The devices looked crude compared to most alien technology, all exposed metal and thick power cables, but they represented humanity's best chance at victory. All teams report ready, her communications officer announced. Power levels at maximum. Maria lifted her hand. On my mark. She watched the energy readings climb. Fire. The combined blast from the Thunderhead units lit up the sky like a new sun. The crystal formation tried to split apart, but the humans had predicted this move. Smaller units positioned around the perimeter activated, creating a containment field that forced the crystals to face the full power of the attack. Look at the readings, Dr. Wilson exclaimed, her eyes fixed on her instruments. They're trying to adapt, but they can't handle all 3 energy types at once. The structure is breaking down at the molecular level. The massive formation began to crumble, its glow flickering and dying. As it collapsed, the ground shook, and clouds of crystalline dust filled the air. But the human teams, protected by their heavy environment suits, moved in immediately to collect samples and secure the area. On the council observation station, the alien representatives watched in stunned silence. The Bloom ambassador's petals had turned a bright yellow, a sign of joy in his species. They did it, he whispered. They actually did it. Tom Reed nodded, smiling. And that's not even the best part. Watch what happens next. Down on the surface, human engineers were already setting up permanent defense stations. They worked alongside Bloom technicians, teaching them how to maintain and operate the equipment. The humans moved with careful precision in the dangerous environment, but their alien students were starting to show similar confidence. See this control panel, a human engineer explained to a group of Bloom workers. If the crystals ever return, you hit this button, and the whole defense grid activates automatically. Simple, reliable, and tough, just like we build everything on Earth. News of the victory spread quickly across the galaxy. Reports showed crystal formations retreating from other Bloom worlds, apparently communicating their defeats to each other. The humans pressed their advantage, pursuing the fleeing entities and setting up defense grids on every liberated world. But it was in the aftermath of battle that humanity showed its true nature. Instead of just destroying the crystal entities, they began studying them. Dr. Wilson led teams that analyzed the crystalline structures, looking for ways to understand and potentially use their unique properties. These formations aren't just threats, she explained to a fascinated group of Bloom scientists. They're amazing examples of adaptive life. On Earth, we learned that sometimes our greatest challenges can become our greatest resources, if we're smart about it. The council members, watching all of this unfold, began to see the Deathworlders in a new light. Where they had expected crude violence, they found careful planning. Where they had feared destruction, They discovered preservation and learning. Commander Torres stood with the Bloom ambassador, surveying a newly cleared area where young plants were already beginning to grow again. The defense grid hummed quietly in the background, its presence now a comfort rather than a reminder of danger. "Your people are remarkable," the ambassador said, his translator conveying genuine admiration. "You face danger without fear, yet you also show great wisdom." Maria smiled. "That's because Earth taught us something important. Survival isn't just about being strong. It's about being smart, being adaptable, and most importantly, being willing to help others survive too." As they watched the sun set over the recovering landscape, more human ships arrived in orbit. They carried supplies, building materials, and expert teams ready to help rebuild the damaged Bloom worlds. The crystal entities had meant to destroy these planets, but instead they had created something unexpected, a bridge between two very different species. The Deathworlders had not just responded to a plea for help, they had changed the galaxy's understanding of what strength truly meant. Sometimes the most dangerous species could also be the most compassionate, and sometimes the best way to survive was to help others do the same. 1 month after the major victory over the crystal entities, the Council's main research station buzzed with activity. The large observation dome, usually reserved for peaceful stellar studies, had been converted into a joint human-alien research center. Dr. Wilson stood at the center of the dome, surrounded by floating holographic displays, showing human DNA sequences alongside readings from various alien species. Around her, scientists from 12 different species worked together, studying data from Earth and comparing it to their own worlds. "It's not just about physical strength," she explained to the fascinated audience. "Earth's gravity and harsh conditions forced us to develop multiple backup systems in our bodies. When one system fails, another takes over." She pointed to a display showing human cellular structure. "We're built to adapt and survive." The alien scientists watched in amazement as she played videos from Earth, humans living in the freezing Arctic, diving in crushing ocean depths, surviving in scorching deserts, and even preparing for life on Mars. "Your species seeks out these challenges?" asked a council researcher, his translator buzzing with disbelief. "You deliberately go to dangerous places." "Of course," Dr. Wilson smiled. "That's how we learn and grow stronger. Every challenge we face teaches us something new." In another part of the station, Commander Torres was working with Bloom Defense Forces, teaching them how to think like humans when facing threats. The Bloom warriors, traditionally peaceful, were learning to channel their protective instincts in new ways. "You don't have to become violent to be strong," Maria explained, showing them how to operate the defense systems. "Look at Earth's immune system. It defends without destroying, adapts without losing itself. That's what we're teaching you." The Bloom trainees watched carefully as she demonstrated techniques for containing threats without causing unnecessary harm. Their natural empathy, combined with human defensive strategies, was creating an entirely new approach to planetary protection. Meanwhile, in the station's main laboratory, something extraordinary was happening. Human and Bloom scientists had discovered that the crystal entities' adaptive abilities could be modified and used beneficially. They found ways to grow controlled crystal formations that could protect vulnerable ecosystems and strengthen damaged environments. "It's just like Earth's history," Tom Reed explained to the council members who had gathered to observe. "Many things that once threatened us became tools for survival once we understood them better. Like how we learned to use fire, or how we turned deadly bacteria into medicines." The council chairman, who had once feared the humans' involvement, now watched their work with growing respect. "Your species continues to surprise us," he said to Tom. "We thought you would simply destroy the threat. Instead, you've turned it into something beneficial." "That's because Earth taught us something important," Tom replied. "In nature, nothing is purely good or purely bad. It's all about understanding and finding balance." The research center had become a symbol of this new understanding. Humans worked alongside aliens, sharing their knowledge of survival and adaptation. The aliens, in turn, shared their deep knowledge of peaceful cooperation and harmony with nature. Dr. Wilson's team made another breakthrough that day. They discovered that the crystal entities had originally evolved as planetary defense mechanisms, protecting young worlds from harmful radiation. Over time, they had lost their original purpose and become destructive, but the humans found a way to restore their protective nature. This is why we never stop studying, never stop trying to understand, she told her alien colleagues. Sometimes the greatest dangers can become the greatest allies, if we're willing to learn from them. As the day ended, the station's observation dome offered a view of a nearby Bloom world. The planet's surface now glittered with controlled crystal formations, their purple glow transformed into a gentle blue. They formed protective barriers around recovering ecosystems, working in harmony with the planet's natural life. The Bloom ambassador stood beside Commander Torres, watching his homeworld heal. "When we first learned about Deathworlders," he said, "we thought you would bring only destruction. Instead, you've taught us that true strength lies in understanding, adaptation, and growth." Maria nodded, looking out at the stars. "That's the real lesson of Earth," she said. "It's not about being the strongest or the most dangerous. It's about learning from every challenge and using that knowledge to help others. Sometimes, the hardest worlds create the most compassionate hearts." 6 months after the Crystal Crisis, the Galactic Council gathered for a historic session. The Grand Meeting Hall looked different now. The once pristine white walls had been reinforced with protective crystal formations that glowed with a soft blue light, a symbol of how danger could be transformed into safety. Ambassador Jack Thompson stood at the center of the hall, but this time, no one flinched at his presence. Beside him stood Commander Torres and Dr. Wilson, along with the Bloom ambassador whose petals now shimmered with vibrant colors of health and happiness. "The Human-Bloom Alliance has exceeded all expectations," the council chairman announced, his translator conveying genuine warmth. "What began as a desperate plea for help has become something remarkable." The main display showed images from across the galaxy. Bloom worlds protected by modified crystal formations, human experts teaching other species how to handle extreme environments, and joint research teams making breakthrough discoveries. But perhaps most importantly, the chairman continued, "We have learned that our fear of Deathworlders was based on misunderstanding. True strength isn't about destruction, it's about adaptation, protection, and growth." Jack stepped forward, smiling at the assembled representatives. "On Earth, we have a saying, the strongest trees grow in the strongest winds. Our harsh world didn't make us dangerous. It made us resilient, and resilience is meant to be shared." The council then made its historic announcement. Humans would no longer be classified as Deathworlders. Instead, they would be known as a guardian species. This new classification recognized species that combine the ability to handle extreme conditions with the wisdom to use that strength to protect others. Tom Reed, now promoted to senior council advisor, watched from his seat with pride. His simple suggestion months ago had changed the course of galactic history. As if reading his thoughts, Dr. Wilson leaned over and whispered, "Not bad for a junior archivist. Huh." The ceremony continued as the Bloom ambassador presented humanity's representatives with a gift, a living crystal formation shaped into a beautiful sculpture. It showed a human hand and a bloom tendril intertwined, supporting a small growing plant. "This represents what you have taught us," the ambassador said, "that life finds a way to thrive even in the harshest conditions, and that the strongest bonds are formed when we face challenges together." Commander Torres had her own announcement to make. The Human-Bloom Joint Defense Force had established a new rapid response team, ready to help any species facing environmental or biological threats. Already, 3 other civilizations had requested their assistance with long-standing problems. "Every world has its challenges," she explained to the council. "Earth taught us how to face them. Now we can help others do the same." Dr. Wilson then revealed the latest research breakthrough. The crystal entities, once a threat, had been fully understood. Their protective properties could be adapted to help terraform hostile planets, clean polluted environments, and shield vulnerable species from radiation. What had nearly destroyed one civilization would now help many others survive and thrive. As the session ended, a group of young Bloom children entered the hall, accompanied by human children from the newly established joint colony. They moved together without fear or hesitation, the human kids carefully watching out for their more delicate friends, while the Bloom children used their natural empathy to help the humans navigate alien customs. "That's the future right there," Jack said, watching the children play. "Not just survival, but thriving together. Not just tolerance, but true understanding." The council chairman looked out at the gathered species, the once feared humans standing proudly alongside the peaceful Bloom, with representatives from dozens of other civilizations now eager to learn from both. "Perhaps," he said thoughtfully, "this is what the galaxy needed all along. Not just peaceful species avoiding challenges, but those who know how to face them. Not just those who flee from danger, but those who know how to transform it into strength." As the children's laughter echoed through the hall, a new crystal formation near the ceiling caught the light, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the walls. It was a perfect symbol of this new age. Beauty born from challenge, strength shaped by wisdom, and hope growing from the union of different worlds. The Deathworlders had not just responded to a plea for help. They had shown the galaxy a new way forward, where the harshest worlds could produce the kindest hearts, and where facing challenges together made all species stronger.